about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book The Economics of Kindness, none other than Mr. Guy Dauncey.
Hi there.
Welcome, Mr. Guy, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah, hi Daniel. So my name's Guy Dauncey. I live on Vancouver Island in the west of Canada. And I've always spent my life asking how can we build a better world? It's my main commitment. And for the last 10 years, I've been digging into an area that previously intimidated me and made me feel very nervous, which is the economy, because it's so big and so complicated. And it's after doing a lot of reading and thinking and research about economic history and about economics and reading, 500 or 600 books and talking to people, I realized that the core problem with our current economy is it's based on selfishness. That, the investors think that the most important thing they have to do is maximize the return on their capital, ignoring the cost to nature or to workers or to the communities where they operate. And so if the problem is the economics of selfishness, the solution is the economics of kindness. Selfishness means you're trying to dominate others and get one up on them. Kindness means you're cooperating with other people. And all around the world, there are cooperative banks, there are cooperative businesses, there are cooperative community initiatives. And in most of our lives, we know people are being kind to each other. So why can't we do the same in the economy? That's what I'm asking.
Beautifully articulated, Mr. Guy. You've been developing the ideas for this book since at least 2017, giving talks, refining your thesis, and testing arguments with the real communities. After nearly a decade of incubation, what finally made now that the right moment of to send this book into the world?
Well, actually, the moment was 10 years ago. That was when I realized, I've written 10 previous books. I've done a lot of other work, but I always felt intimidated by the economy in trying to find solutions for the economy because it's so big and it's so complicated. And economics always seems so boring and technical and mathematical. And so it was 10 years ago when I realized I had to take the courage and jump in and really start. It was time to understand the economy and get on top of it. So yeah, and that's been 10 years work, including writing the book, researching it, finding a publisher, and finding the book's not published yet, but it will be within a few weeks by my publisher in New York. In the meantime, I've set up a Substack page called The Economics of Kindness. If you just Google my name plus The Economics of Kindness and Substack, and I'm writing there a lot of the ideas from the book.
Well, Mr. Guy, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you. The book's subtitle evolved The Birth of a New Cooperative Economy to a guide for the 21st century to its final form, the end of capitalism, the birth of a new ecological civilization. What did each shift in language reveal about how your thinking deepened over these years?
Yeah, so I've always been a person to spend much more time developing a positive vision of the future and not just complaining about the present. So many conversations we're part of, people are just complaining about how bad the world is and how bad the wars are and how all the conflicts. And my work has always been on the vision of the future. And that future civilization must be ecological. It must have harmony with nature. Our current civilization, we are really, tearing down the world's forests from Malaysia to Africa to British Columbia. We are taking all the fish out of the ocean. We're polluting the air. We're causing climate disruption, which, have terrible consequences just by burning fossil fuels. And in a new ecological civilization, we'll learn to live in harmony with nature. We'll have a fully circular economy. So it's no such thing as all this waste and plastic bags. Everything we use will be recycled and back into the economy. All of our energy will come from renewable energy, solar, wind energy, which by far the cheapest form of energy at the moment and growing rapidly. Even countries like Nepal and Ethiopia are taking the lead on electric vehicles and electric solar panels. And we will, you know, return to loving the wildlife around us, the forests, the woods, the farms, and no longer, cover them with pesticides and treat animals in such an awful way in huge factory farms and stuff like that. So it's a very powerful vision that really, makes me emotionally very, in harmony with this vision. Yeah, thanks.
Indeed, Mr. Guy, in 2003, you posted the first chapter on LinkedIn hoping to find publisher. What did it feel like to put your work into the world before it finished, and what did you learn from that vulnerability?
Oh, I had to approach 27 publishers before I found one. And
Mhm.
it's, I mean, let me give a contrast. If you're training for the Olympics, you train for 4 years and you're never good enough until you are good enough. You're always improving. So in publishing, it's hard work. In America, you have to have an agent. In Canada, you don't. And you just persist and persist and persist. I put out in endless requests, and finally one said, yeah, that looks interesting. Let's do it. But it's called persistence. It's one of the things, I'm growing older now. And one of the things I learn in life, as well as commitment and following a really strong inner purpose, is just persistence. You're going to get setbacks. You're going to get people saying no. If you really believe in what you want to do, you just got to persist. It's basically that, Daniel. Yeah.
Indeed, I agree with you, Mr. Guy. Persistence. You're an eco-futurist by self-description. What does world mean to you, and how does futurist differ from activist or author in your understanding of your own work?
Well, author, everyone knows what an author is. You write books. A futurist is someone who just likes to predict the future and look what the future's going to be like. An eco-futurist, which is what I call myself, is someone who's committed to environmental harmony in the future and seeing what we need to do to make peace with the forest instead of destroying it, to make peace with the oceans. I mean, there are terrible things happening, like people have started farming octopus for food and creating octopus farms. The octopus are highly intelligent animals. They should be left alone to live their life in the oceans. I've been vegetarian for 50 years and almost vegan for the past, 5 or 6 years as well. So I try to minimize my own impact on nature in the food I eat. And we have an electric car, and we have a heat system in the house with a heat pump that doesn't burn any oil or gas. So we're trying to stop using fossil fuels, because fossil fuels are one of the main causes of the climate crisis that is causing the sudden flooding, the sudden forest fires, the sudden droughts, the sudden heat waves, and the sea level rise. And it's going to get an awful lot worse before we get control of this. So I also work a lot of my time on climate action to try and do what we can to stop this. Yeah, I'm always busy with something.
Hmm. Yes, definitely. Your central thesis is that crises like climate collapse, inequality, and social divisions are separate problems. They're symptoms of the economic system designed to reward selfishness, competition, and capital gain. For someone who's been told their whole life that capitalism is simply the way things are, what is the first crack you try to make this that
Yeah,
belief?
that's a very good point, Daniel. Because most people do think that, well, of course, the best economy is capitalist. The alternative is communism or socialism, like in Cuba. But that's assuming that capitalism is basically an economic system, and you change one system for another. But all my reading and research has told me, actually, capitalism is a cultural system based on values of greed and selfishness. The economists simply call it self-interest. But we also have community interest. If we live with self-interest all our lives, we'd never have any friends. They're not going to want to spend time with us. We need community interest, and we need interest with nature. So I believe that capitalism is simply a set of values. And when we have new values in the way we run our businesses and the way we run our banks, and the way we do our investments, and those new values are based on social purpose, meaning, and making a positive difference in the world, it won't be capitalism anymore. There'll still be competition. We need competition between businesses. It's healthy. It creates innovation. It's good. And there'll still be businesses and there'll still be a market because it's a good way to do the competition. But it won't be dominated by monopolies. It won't be dominated by businesses that are selfish, just trying to maximize their capital gains only. There are many ways of investing that allow people to make a good return, without having to do damage to the world.
Mm. Very well said. Very well said, Mr. Guy. Your purpose on economics of kindness, not kindness as individual niceness, but kindness as a structural principle embedded in how we organize work, housing, banking, and democracy. What is the difference between personal kindness and systemic kindness, and why do we need both?
Yeah, that's an important question because most people do think kindness is just, I'll be nice to my neighbor. I'm looking for kindness deep in our economy. So if we take the housing problem at the moment, when, so many people cannot afford the rent they're being asked to pay and cannot possibly even dream of buying a house, they're not experiencing kindness. They're experiencing a system that is cruel. And until 1980, our governments used to invest in building public housing, social housing, and cooperative housing. And then because capitalism took a shift in the 1980s to what's called neoliberal capitalism, which people said the government should not get involved, we should leave it to investors, leave it to business people, they stopped building for lower income people. And they said, leave it to the developers. And the developers, of course, will make much more profit building expensive $1 million houses than they will building affordable housing. So when we take the economics of kindness at a profound level in the economy, we're looking to build cooperative housing, social housing, public housing. In Zurich, one of the big cities in Switzerland, like 40% of all the housing is cooperatives. In a cooperative housing, you own your property you share the ownership with the other people, but you're steady for life. You're not going to be evicted. And you're not still paying rent when you're 80 years old. And ideally, we'd eliminate renting altogether. So because it's very tough for people when the landlord just puts up the rent. Oh, I think I'll charge you $2,000 a month. Or I'll charge you $2,500 a month because they say, well, that's what the market is bearing. But the market is not kind, and they're not being kind because someone has to work hours and hours to pay that rent. And then often they can't afford to buy food because of that. They still got to feed their children. So with cooperative housing, social housing, and community housing, we can, bring kindness to that part of the economy around housing. It's just one example. Yeah.
Mm. Well said, Mr. Guy. And you draw on anthropology, history, and economics to build your case. Which discipline gave you the most hope and which give you the most despair as you research this book?
Huh. Well, anthropology is the most fascinating because it tells the history of humans, not going back in the history books, but going far back 1,000,000 years into the past. And because of my research there, I discovered a really important thing. So as humans, we lived through 4 ages or 4 eras. In the first era, when we were still in the jungle with the monkeys, we were dominated by an alpha male, a strong alpha male who would beat his chest and use his claws to impose his authority on us. So it was a realm of domination. Then about 300,000 years ago, our ancestors who were hunter-gatherers said, I don't like being dominated by an alpha male. And they either pushed them out of the tribe or they killed them or whatever. And they said, let's live cooperatively. And for 300,000 years, our ancestors lived cooperatively, helping each other, supporting each other. And they went out of their way to suppress self-importance, which they discovered was the enemy of kindness and would lead to bad things. Then what happened is when we started getting a food surplus, whether by farming or by finding lots of shellfish and salmon on the beaches in the sea, some families began to go wealthier. And after a while, they said, I want my children to inherit my wealth. And that, with that, their children had an inherent advantage, and they started to dominate again. And so we've had 5,000 years of living with domination again, not cooperation. And then about 250 years ago, we started, a lot of people saying we want more democracy, we want the vote, we want equality, we want labor unions, we want good things like that. And so the impulse to bring cooperation back into the world began 250 years ago, and it's still continuing. There are, like hundreds of thousands of cooperatives around the world. There are cooperative banks, and most of the people your friends, are living among each other cooperatively. They're sharing and caring for each other cooperatively. And so I believe that we can, over a period of time, bring the whole world to operate cooperatively instead of fighting each other and dominating each other and doing all the silly stuff that's in the news today, which makes us all so depressed. So yeah, anthropology, I think, is the queen of the subjects. Economics, the way I first studied it, was really boring, but the way I look at it now, it's really exciting.
Beautifully articulated, Mr. Guy.
Mm.
You offer practical solutions across housing, work, banking, democracy, and farming. If a community came to you and said, "We want to start building a new economy tomorrow, but we can only do one thing," what would you tell them to do first?
That's a that's a let me give an example. Up in Scotland, where there's been a lot of community wealth building happening on the ground, neighbours getting together to grow food or to start a bus service or to build housing, they have the whole country of Scotland has passed something called the Community Wealth Act, which requires every local government to prioritise starting cooperatives, supporting local economies, meeting local needs. So the first thing I think that a community needs to do is learn about community wealth building and ask to do a presentation to their local council with a proposal as to how the council could start bringing people together in the community where you live to solve local problems, to build the economy, to have more cooperatives, to start a car sharing scheme, to improve transit, to grow more food, to look after green spaces, whatever the problem is locally. Every community is different. In one community, it might be the problem is just crime on the streets. In another community, it might be homelessness. So people have to decide for themselves, like, what's the important thing I want to do? But also, you got to think, if you're engaging personally as a volunteer, which is how most of us start, what turns me on? What excites me? What's got motivation? Because I've spent years and years doing voluntary work, and it's always based on what my heart wants to do. Because no one's paying you to do it. You've got to want to do it. And you've got to find friends. So find a group of 4 or 5 other friends, meet with them, so you can actually meet together every week, share a meal together, and discuss what you're going to do next. Then it's what I call the 5th law of sustainability. If it's not fun, it's not sustainable.
Indeed, if it's not fun, wow, it's not worth it to do. You call of the end of capitalism. That's a phrase that makes many people defensive or afraid. How do you speak about endings in a way that opens doors rather than slamming them shut?
Yeah, I understand it's deliberate, my use of that phrase. But I want people to realize that the transition out of capitalism is not to socialism, it's to a cooperative economy. And all the evidence shows that businesses in a cooperative economy are stronger, more resilient, more successful, pay their workers more money, and generally make people happier. And so we're not taking away the market economy. We still have a market economy within it, but it's a mixed market economy. We're not taking away businesses, but a lot of those businesses will be following social purpose guidelines. They're called benefit corporations, or they're owned by their employees, called employee ownership shareholding, or they're cooperatives. So people are no longer grumbling that their boss is telling them what to do, because they become the boss. They own their company themselves. So a cooperative economy will be stronger than a capitalist economy and stop doing all the damage that capitalism does, because people do understand that capitalism does a lot of damage. It's behind the destruction of the forests, the destruction in the oceans, the supermarket monopolies, the high price of food, the selfishness that shareholders use to try and squeeze more money out of people. All that can be ended in a cooperative economy that'll be more successful and make people happier. Big ideas, and yes, we have to have big ideas, right?
Definitely big ideas. We need those big ideas right now, Mr. Guy. You known as an ecofuturist, someone who knows or envisions positive futures rather than just warning about collapse. In a time so many climate conversations are dominated by despair, how do you hold on to ability to imagine something better?
Yeah, when it comes to the climate crisis, you're absolutely right. It is a reason for fear and despair. And the only solution to that is climate action. It's just an experience that when you are doing something to try and make a difference, you don't feel so much fear and despair because you're doing what you can, whether it's, persuading people to, use less energy or to shift to public transit or cycling or a vegetarian diet or to put a heat pump in their home or to plant more trees. Also, work with other people to get regulations changed so we don't support fossil fuels anymore. We stop promoting liquefied natural gas and coal and oil. So when you're doing something, you feel more positive. But if we don't do anything, the impact of the increased climate pollution caused by, number one, by burning fossil fuels, coal and oil and gas, and number two, by destroying forests, and number three, by eating meat, especially beef and pork, because of the molecules they put out that trap heat in the atmosphere. So it's the biggest crisis we face actually on the planet, but it's where we need most people to get involved and make a difference. That's why I founded the West Coast Climate Action Network. We call it We Can, and we have 275 member organizations around British Columbia working to make a difference in their local communities where they live. The website is westcoastclimateaction.ca. And for my overall work on kindness, if you go to Substack, you look for economics of kindness. If you just Google that phrase, you'll find me and you'll find my Substack page. But climate is a huge issue. Yeah, totally. You're right.
Mr. Guy, to wrap up our discussion for today, at the very end of the book, after all the arguments and evidence and visions, what's one thing feeling you hope says with readers after they close the cover? Not a policy, not statistics, but something deeper about what possible, what we owe each other, and how we might yet become.
So the thing I really want readers to finish with when they close the book is hope, a feeling of hope. And then the question, what can I do about it? And the final chapter is actually called Circles of Hope. And it's how to form a circle with local friends to start doing stuff locally. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Guy, thank you so much for sharing your book to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support it?
I will do that, Daniel. Thank you for doing this. Yeah.
You're welcome. So, where do people can reach you?
They have to Google me at either my name, Guy Dauncey, or The Economics of Kindness. That's the easiest way to find me. And Substack.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Guy Dauncey, because if you support him for so more and more empowering books like this to rise. So, Mr. Guy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your time, Lucas. Daniel. Yeah. Bye-bye.
More to come, people. See you soon.